Coming up on MilCyberSync, a joint effort to protect against China's growing force in the tech space.
Also ahead, the annual Developers Conference. Apple giving the keynote with tons of updates and new features. So get ready to get in sync with MilCyberSync.
You're watching the MilCyberSync podcast with Nick Thomas and Layla Gouland. And today, an interview with Josh Boffman.
Hello and welcome to the MilCyberSync podcast, reporting on the latest events happening in cyber news. I'm Layla Gouland with your host, Nick Thomas. Nick, it's great to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Layla. How are you this week?
Doing just fine. You've been busy.
It's been a busy week, so let's get started, okay?
All right.
All right. An expert panel is calling on the White House-based Office of the National Cyber Director to steer a government-wide cybersecurity workforce strategy to address long-standing workforce shortages. The panel wants National Cyber Director Chris Inglis to use his position to review agencies' cyber budgets, revamp hiring mechanisms across the government, and potentially even work with Congress to establish expected service authorities for cyber personnel across the government. There are nearly 600,000 cyber job openings nationwide, and for the government alone, there are almost 39,000 job openings.
Wow. Well, tech firms Microsoft and Tenable have partnered in an effort to improve the nation's cybersecurity. Microsoft's Ann Johnson says Tenable is a pioneer in the risk management market and creator of Nessus, one of the most widely deployed vulnerability assessment solutions in the cybersecurity industry. Together, Microsoft and Tenable will help enhance the United States government's ability to quickly identify, investigate, prioritize, and remediate threats and help collectively raise the country's security posture. The partnership stems in part from President Biden's executive order on cybersecurity issued May 12th of last year.
The U.S. CyberCommand has awarded a nearly $60 million contract for so-called hunt forward operations. The award goes to Sealing Technologies to provide equipment to conduct defensive cyber ops abroad on the networks of partner nations. Hunt forward operations involve physically sending defensively oriented cyber protection teams from the Cyber National Mission Force to foreign nations to hunt for threats on their networks at the invitation of host nations. The equipment will support automated deployments, configurations, and data flows for cyber ops. It's modular and self-contained units that can be carried on commercial aircraft. Hunt forward operations are a key pillar of CyberCommand's persistent engagement operating concept. This allows constant contact with adversaries to cause them friction in their attempts.
Maryland Governor Larry Hogan signed measures to strengthen cybersecurity in state and local governments. Roughly $570 million will be used for cybersecurity and information technology. This includes about $200 million for cybersecurity and nearly $334 million for information technology development projects. Hogan also signed a bill to create reporting requirements for state agencies and local governments, including reporting of cybersecurity incidents. Agencies will be required to complete a cybersecurity assessment and to remediate findings. Local government entities will have to consult with a local emergency manager to create or update a cybersecurity preparedness and response plan. CISA, the National Security Agency, and the FBI have released a joint cybersecurity advisory to provide information on ways in which People's Republic of China state-sponsored cyber actors continue to exploit networks. And the advisory details PRC state-sponsored targeting and compromise of major telecommunications companies and network service providers. It also provides information on the top vulnerabilities associated with network devices routinely exploited by PRC cyber actors since 2020. CISA, NSA, and the FBI encourage organizations to review People's Republic of China state-sponsored cyber actors to exploit network providers and devices to learn about PRC tactics, techniques, and procedures, and to apply the recommended mitigations. Nick?
Secretary of State Antony Blinken joined other officials urging lawmakers to pass legislation that would significantly invest in research and development and private sector incentives to secure the supply chain of advanced technologies from threats presented by China. Blinken was specifically referring to bipartisan legislation that would put at least $50 billion towards grants in order to incentivize the industry to establish fabrication plants for the chips, the vast majority of which are currently in East Asia within the United States. The Semiconductor Industry Association is pushing for additional tax breaks. Some Republican members of Congress have questioned allowing U.S. companies a tax write-off for investments in semiconductor research and development on top of the grant incentives. Blinken also stressed the importance of working in concert with international allies and more actively defending against China's efforts to advance its own technological might and influence, including by improving national cyber defenses. Federal law enforcement agencies have seized several internet domain names during an international investigation into websites that permit users to buy stolen personal data or hack other networks. One domain in particular, WeLeakInfo.to, allegedly claimed to provide its users with a search engine to find and obtain sensitive personal information that originated from data breaches and cyber attacks on other networks. Other IP addresses seized include ipstress.in and ovh-booter.com, which offered to launch cyber attacks on networks on a distributed denial of service basis. DDoS attacks are known for utilizing internet applications to attack the computers that are hosting a certain website. Attackers usually flood the page with traffic, crowding the server and making it difficult for users to interact with the websites. Law enforcement counterparts in the Netherlands and Belgium also took similar steps. Layla?
Well, the broadcast of the Football World Cup 2022 qualifier game between Wales and Ukraine was interrupted in Ukraine by a cyber attack that targeted OLL.TV, a Ukrainian online broadcasting platform, as well as several TV channels. Ukraine's football team was playing a decisive match against Wales to qualify for the Football World Cup 2022's main event to be held in November. But minutes before the first whistle, a Ukrainian online platform was hit by that cyber attack. The site's traffic was rerouted to a Russian propaganda-based channel to spread disinformation among Ukrainians. Officials say these attempts further destabilize the situation in Ukraine by using PSYOPs, or psychological warfare. It took more than 6 hours to restore the systems. Wales went on to win the match. Russia's invasion of Ukraine began on February 24th. Nick?
The Senate has confirmed Air Force Lieutenant General Timothy Haw as a new deputy for U.S. CyberCommand. The command guards the Department of Defense information networks and coordinates cyberspace operations. He will replace Lieutenant General Charles Moore as the number 2 at Cybercom, one of 11 unified combatant commands. Moore held the position since late 2020. Haw, who was tapped for the post in April, most recently commanded the Air Force's Information and Warfare Branch, the 16th Air Force, which is Air Force's cyber. Air Force Major General Kevin Kennedy, the Cybercom Operations Director, was selected to succeed him. Lawmakers have not yet moved on the nomination. The 3-star Lieutenant General is considered a likely successor to General Paul Nakasone, the leader of Cybercom and the director of the National Security Agency. Nakasone assumed the combined role, often referred to as dual hat, in 2018.
Well, Apple says that it protected millions of users from being defrauded to the tune of $1.5 billion in the last year. According to a new report by Apple, over 1.6 million risky and untrustworthy apps and app updates were stopped in their tracks due to the company's fraud prevention analysis on its App Store. During 2021, Apple says that more than 835,000 problematic new apps and an additional 805,000 app updates were rejected or removed for violating the App Store's guidelines, which aim to weed out buggy, unfinished apps, as well as those that contain potential issues related to privacy, security, and spam. Both Google and Apple app stores have been plagued with apps that fleece users of large amounts of money if they do not cancel their subscription before the end of a short free trial. We've got more Apple news after the break, but when we come back, the Metaverse. Don't go anywhere.
Today's network and security monitoring solutions are vulnerable to overload situations that lead to decreased visibility and undetected intrusions. Monitoring applications require hardware to keep up with real-time traffic analysis, making it complex and costly. Your security monitoring solutions may be unable to keep up during cyber attacks or traffic spikes, making intrusion more likely. A new approach is needed to increase network protection and visibility. Excelio simplifies and streamlines your network monitoring for critical security, network, and application analysis. Learn more at excelio.com.
Welcome back. The Metaverse sounds like a term from a blockbuster science fiction movie, but do you really know what it is and what happens there? Well, Josh Bogman recently presented on what the Metaverse is, as well as how China is taking charge with their own version of the Metaverse. And Nick, you recently had a chance to chat with Josh on this topic.
Yeah, thanks, Layla. I did. So Josh currently serves as an analyst at Air University's China Aerospace Studies Institute, which is known as CASI, and as a chief marketing officer of the Military Cyber Professional Association. He also served on the staff of the National Defense University College of Information and Cyberspace, as well as the U.S. Air Force Academy, and as a national security journalist in Beijing and Boren Fellow at Tsinghua University. So he's very well versed in these topics. So Josh presented this topic at our first HammerCon, and I was able to catch up with him and chat about this intriguing topic. Josh, welcome to the show, and thanks for taking time out with us today. So you've performed extensive research on this topic and recently presented not only in print, but this topic in person at HammerCon. And the Metaverse is this strange new word, new science fiction thing that people are talking about. From what I've seen about it, people are walking around with these VR goggles on. They make their own icon in whatever world or land they go to. I see some banks are getting into this now, trying to do transactions in the Metaverse. So can you explain to the viewers and listeners exactly what the Metaverse is?
Actually, no, I can't explain exactly what the Metaverse is. There is no one clear, definitive definition of what it is. It's a nascent technology. That being said, I did actually use a definition, many definitions in my paper. One of the ones I liked was the Metaverse is the post-reality universe, perpetual and persistent multi-user environment, merging physical reality with digital virtual reality. But to kind of unpack that, another way of thinking about it is the next evolution of the internet. That being said, one of the misconceptions is that it's just, you look at the VR goggles and that's what the Metaverse is. But actually, the Metaverse is device agnostic. And the idea is, with the internet, we're moving towards more interactive, more doing. You're going to be using all your senses. And actually, they're even working on, simulating smell. So it's really incredible environment right now. A lot of technology changing. Another way of thinking about it is the physical internet. It's the internet in 3D. So it's very immersive. You're going to be doing and interacting a lot.
Great. So while the United States and the rest of the world has plans for it, what plans does China have with the Metaverse?
Yeah. So 2021, in many publications in China, they've dubbed it year one of the Metaverse. So when I was starting my research on China and the Metaverse, the first place I looked at was CNKI, which is basically a database with magazine, academic articles, and things like that. And over the past year, you've seen a huge spike in interest and research and studies and things going on with the Metaverse. Aside from that, we've seen upwards of 11,000 trademarks from 1,600 firms. Many cities in their 5-year plan, like Shanghai, Hefei, Wuhan, and others, have included aspects of the Metaverse in those plans. You've seen industrial parks, special committees, labs, etc., being built specifically to look into the Metaverse. There's also been a lot of different conferences being held. We have major players like Baidu, Tencent, Alibaba. All of them have been in conferences, hosted their own conferences, and talked about the Metaverse. And finally, there's been tons of major research being done. One of the ones that I mentioned and get into in my paper is from the Chinese Institute of Contemporary International Relations, where they talk about the metaverse and the relationship with national security. And just to note that think tank is actually connected with the Ministry of State Security, which is kind of like their CIA. So a lot of major players, but another question to ask is, what they're doing, but why? Where is this coming from? And I think the first place to look is at the top. So you can look to Xi Jinping and his ideas on technology and innovation, things like that. So not just since he took the lead in China, but since his entire career, he's focused on the importance of technology and things of that nature. And some of his recent speeches, he talked about, connecting the great rejuvenation of China with science and technology, and that, they want to be this science and technology superpower. You look at their strategy, like cyberspace strategy, talking about national sovereignty and how, cyberspace is another place they need to protect, and that metaverse will be part of that. And then you look at, investment, like this, what's called building digital China or new type infrastructure. They're investing 1.75 trillion into things like the industrial internet, dual gigabit networks, satellite internet network, nationally integrated system of big data centers, which all will be connected and help enhance, what they're doing with the metaverse. And then finally, what they see from this is they want to be, this first mover. If you're a first mover, you have a huge advantage. It'll be a huge advantage they talk about with their economy, but also shaping international norms and potentially even helping benefit their soft power.
So that 1.75 trillion, that really got to me when you presented that, because that's something we can't do here in the United States. That's something that autonomy has over there that they could do.
Absolutely.
So here's another question. Moving on to the PLA, or the People's Liberation Army, which your research focuses on. What are China's military plans for the metaverse?
Yeah, this is really interesting that they've been talking about this. So what I've seen, we first saw the end of last year, this idea they put forth, the battlefield metaverse, which I combined to simply say the battleverse. So it's the military application of the metaverse. So the first instance, and we're seeing an interesting trend here. The first instance of this was the end of last year in the article Uncovering the Metaverse, where they talk about simulating war for civilians to see how terrible it is and make people not want to go to war. And the idea is peace. So we're starting with this idea of battleverse and peace to begin with. A few months later, though, there's a shift. Looking forward to the battleverse is the next article, and they actually talk about how do we build a battleverse, a military metaverse that we can use. So they talk about different elements, and one of the things to mention is not all of this is possible now, but it is something that they aspire to create. But some of the things are obvious. They want to have an independent network so that it's, separate from, of course, civilian metaverse, authentication, security, diversified user access. They also want to have immersive real-time interaction, which is key to having an effective metaverse, powerful AI bots, realistic performance simulation, and flexible scene generation. And what they see from this, there's a lot of different benefits. Number one, education. Education in the PLA daily and other media, education is very important for the PLA. So this is another way for them to educate the soldiers wherever they may be in the country. They also talk about training, testing, research, and even backup communication if other means of communication are not possible. And then finally, the most recent article, we've started at peace. Now we're going to talk about war. It's called The Metaverse, New Heights of Future Cognitive Warfare. It's a very interesting piece in the sense they talk about different confrontation styles when dealing with an adversary that also has a metaverse. So they talk about direct, attack with a platform confrontation. They talk about system attack, which is essentially attacking the supply chain connected, the technology connected with the metaverse. And then finally, we have indirect diversion, which deals with, having information that's incorrect, maybe coming to you or disorienting you or different ideas that's not completely destroying the metaverse but disrupting it in subtle ways.
Wow, I've got a lot of plans there. Josh, what are you doing right now? Can you give us a preview of your current research on Metaverse?
Yeah, so one of the things that I mentioned, how do we build the Battleverse, is, AI bots. How do we simulate, the adversary? So in America, we have, blue versus red, but in China, it's flipped where red is, China and blue is the adversary. So what we're seeing now is this idea of creating AI models that simulates, the adversary within the metaverse. They talk about powerful all-element joint combat simulation platforms. So I'm getting into that and learning more about that. It's really interesting and continuing to evolve with what's going on in that field.
Awesome. Great. Well, Josh, thanks for your insights. Make sure to check out his articles in Cyber Magazine, Military Cyber Affairs Journal, and of course the HammerCon presentation, which will be released on MCPA's YouTube channel. Josh Bauman, thanks for your time, and back to the show.
That was a really great interview, Nick. Really interesting.
Yeah, great. Thanks.
Yeah, very good. Well, finally this week, Apple held their annual Worldwide Developers Conference. During the presentation, the tech giant revealed a host of new software updates for the iPhone, iPad, Mac, and Apple Watch. Apple also revealed its latest hardware features for its MacBook line and the latest iteration of its signature silicon chip. While some of these features are available now, others will be available later this year. Some of the highlights include Apple Watch OS 9 updates that include 4 new watch faces, including Astronomy, Lunar, Playtime, and Metropolitan, new banner notifications, an expansion of podcast coverage, and workout coverage will be expanded. The fitness app will also be available on all iOS 16 phones, so those without an Apple Watch will still be able to track their fitness journey, Nick.
Yeah, so you'll be able to hear the MCPA podcast, right?
That's right.
Keep up with it. So, and for those who want to monitor their heart health, the AFib heart rate tracker can monitor users' heart rates and let users know what percentage of their heartbeats in the last 24 hours has been irregular. Plus, users can set reminders to take medications, share health data with family members and doctors, and notify if medications may clash with each other. Additionally, if you would like to work hands-free, Dictation also saw some major software updates that allow users to swap seamlessly between voice dictation and the touchscreen keyboard, and will include emoji dictation, Layla.
Yeah, I like that one feature.
Right.
Laughy emoji. Put it there.
Yeah, right.
One of the most widely used apps, Apple Maps, will now allow multi-stop routing and cycling times. But one of the biggies to compete with Alexa and Google Home are the new features in the Matter Smart Home app. Users will be able to navigate and control their smart home, adjust lights, climate controls, check cameras, and so much more. Nick.
But for a lot of Apple watchers, it was the next generation M2 chip that was the anticipated announcement. The power efficient chip is 50% faster than their M1 and has nearly twice the power. Apple is also introducing the chip in their new MacBook Air. The latest MacBook Air comes with a new all aluminum design featured in silver, space gray, starlight, and midnight. Measures just over 11 millimeters and weighs just under 3 pounds.
It's amazing. They're getting smaller and smaller and more attractive.
Smaller and lighter.
And finally, Mac OS is seeing some changes. Users can now unsend emails if there is a mistake. This is a good one for me. Additionally, the search engine has been enhanced, so it's now easier to find an email in your inbox. And Safari also saw updates in addition to intelligent tracking, which helps track users' browsing history. Users can also share tab groupings with friends and family. And, you know, Nick, we barely scratched the surface, but really, that's all the time we have for now. So that's going to do it for us. On behalf of Nick and myself, thank you so much for watching. You are now in sync with MilCyberSync. We'll see you again next time.
Tune in next week for more news and insightful interviews. Brought to you by the Military Cyber Professionals Association.